The letter arrived on a cold morning in January. Kang Ti-ho was sitting in his small apartment on the 47th floor of a housing block in New Seoul when his door made a soft beeping sound. He limped to the entrance, his bad leg aching as it always did when the weather turned cold. A delivery drone floated outside, holding a thick envelope marked with the seal of the Galactic Legal Office. Ti-ho took the envelope and closed the door. He stared at it for a long moment before opening it. Inside was a document written in formal language that took him several minutes to understand. His great-uncle, a man named Kang Dong-hwan whom he had met only twice in his entire life, had died. And for reasons Ti-ho could not understand, the old man had left everything to him. Everything turned out to be a single item: the deed to an abandoned space station called Outpost Halo 7, located somewhere in the Kepler frontier. Ti-ho sat down heavily in his chair and read the document again. He remembered his great-uncle as a strange and quiet man who had visited his family when Ti-ho was just a boy. The old man had worn a military uniform covered in medals, but he never spoke about his service. He had looked at young Ti-ho with knowing eyes and said only one thing: "You have the look of a soldier. Remember that blood carries more than just life." Ti-ho had not understood those words then. He did not understand them now. The door to the small bedroom opened, and his daughter Yuna stepped out. She was 19 years old, with sharp eyes and quick hands that were always covered in grease from whatever machine she was taking apart. She looked at her father's face and immediately knew something had happened. "What is it?" she asked. Ti-ho handed her the document without speaking. Yuna read it quickly, her eyebrows rising higher with each line. "You inherited a space station," she said, "from a great-uncle you barely knew." "It seems so," Ti-ho replied. "Where is this outpost Halo 7? "The Kepler frontier, near the edge of human space." Yuna was quiet for a moment. Then she looked at her father with the practical expression she had inherited from her mother. "We should go to Orbital Command and find out what this is worth. Maybe we can sell it." Ti-ho nodded slowly. It was a reasonable plan. They had very little money. His military pension was small, and Yuna's work repairing old machinery paid even less. Selling an abandoned station might give them enough to start a better life somewhere else. 3 days later, they took a shuttle to Earth's Orbital Command, a massive ring station that hung above the planet like a crown of steel and light. The station was always crowded with military officers, government workers, and representatives from the various alien species that made up the Galactic Assembly. Humans moved quickly through the corridors, their heads down, trying not to draw attention. Among the tall, elegant Velkari and the ancient, slow-moving Korath, humanity was the youngest and weakest species. Everyone knew it. Ti-ho and Yuna made their way to the legal processing center. The wait was long. When they finally reached the counter, a tired clerk examined their documents and directed them to Office 7C for inheritance verification. They walked through the crowded halls, and that was when the trouble began. A loud voice called out behind them, "Well, well, if it isn't Kang Ti-ho." Ti-ho stopped and turned. A man in a decorated admiral's uniform was walking toward them, followed by a group of junior officers. The man was Baek Sung-ho, and Ti-ho knew him well. They had served together during the border wars against the Velkari Empire, though Baek had always been more interested in politics than fighting. Now he was an admiral, while Ti-ho was a retired soldier with a bad leg and an empty bank account. "Admiral Baek," Ti-ho said, keeping his voice neutral. Baek smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "I heard about your inheritance. The whole command is talking about it." He turned to his officers and laughed. "Old Ti-ho here got a pile of scrap metal floating in nowhere space. That station was decommissioned 60 years ago. It is completely worthless." The officers laughed along with their admiral. A few other people in the corridor stopped to watch. "What are you going to do with it?" Baek continued, his voice loud enough for everyone to hear. "Open a restaurant, start a hotel for space travelers." More laughter. That station is so far from anywhere that you would starve before a single customer arrived. Yuna stepped forward, her hands clenched into fists. You should not speak to my father that way. Beak looked at her with amusement. And who are you? The daughter. He shook his head. Let me give you some advice, girl. Your father was a decent soldier once, but those days are gone. He got himself injured and now he is nobody. And this inheritance, it is a joke. Someone at the legal office probably laughed for an hour when they processed it. Tiho put a hand on Yuna's shoulder. Come, he said quietly. We have business to finish. He turned and walked away, pulling his daughter with him. Behind them, he could hear Beak still talking to his officers, making more jokes at his expense. The laughter followed them down the corridor like something sharp and ugly. Yuna was shaking with anger. Why did you not say anything? Why did you let him talk to you like that? Tiho did not answer immediately. They kept walking until they found a quiet corner away from the crowds. Then he stopped and looked at his daughter. Words are just words, he said. They only have power if you let them. Admiral Beak wants me to react. He wants me to give him a reason to make my life even more difficult. I will not give him that satisfaction. But he was wrong about you, Yuna said. You are not nobody. You fought in the border wars. You saved people. Tiho smiled sadly. The military does not remember the soldiers who saved people. They remember the soldiers who followed orders and made their commanders look good. I was never that kind of soldier. They completed their business at Office 7C. The clerk confirmed that Outpost Halo 7 now belonged to Tiho. The only additional information in the file was a brief note. The station had been part of something called Project Ember. All other details were classified or deleted. Project Ember, Yuna repeated as they left the office. What do you think that means? I do not know, Tiho admitted. But I suspect my great uncle was involved in something more important than anyone realized. That night, back in their small apartment, Yuna made a suggestion that would change everything. We should go there, she said, to the station. Tiho looked up from the document he was studying. It is very far. The trip would cost almost everything we have. We have almost nothing anyway, Yuna pointed out. And what is keeping us here? You have no job, I have no future. Everyone looks at us like we are failures. She leaned forward, her eyes bright with something that Tiho had not seen in a long time. Hope. At least out there we would have something that belongs to us, something that is ours. Tiho thought about Admiral Beak's mocking laughter. He thought about the tiny apartment where they barely had enough space to move. He thought about his great-uncle's strange words from so many years ago. Blood carries more than just life. All right, he said finally, we will go. 1 week later, they sold everything they owned. The furniture, the appliances, even Yuna's collection of machine parts that she had gathered over the years. It was just enough to buy 2 tickets on a cargo ship heading to the Kepler frontier. As the ship pulled away from Earth's orbit, Yuna stood at the observation window and watched the blue planet grow smaller. Beside her, Tiho was quiet. Do you think we're making a mistake? She asked. Tiho considered the question. Maybe, he said, but sometimes a mistake is better than standing still. The stars stretched out before them, cold and endless. Somewhere out there, in the darkness at the edge of human space, an old station was waiting, and neither Tiho nor Yuna had any idea what they would find when they arrived. The journey to the Kepler frontier took 3 weeks. The cargo ship was old and slow, and the passenger section was little more than a few metal rooms with hard beds. But Tiho and Yuna did not complain. They had paid for the cheapest tickets, and they knew what to expect. During the long days of travel, Yuna spent her time studying everything she could find about Outpost Halo 7. The information was very limited. The station had been built 80 years ago during humanity's first expansion into the Kepler system. It was listed as a military observation post, designed to watch the empty space beyond the frontier. 30 years after it was built, the station was decommissioned. No reason was given in the public records. "It does not make sense," Yuna said one evening as they sat in their small cabin. "Why would the military build a station so far from everything and then just abandon it? What were they watching for?" Tiho had no answer. He had spent his career fighting in small wars against the Velkari Empire, skirmishes over mining rights and border territories. The deep mysteries of space had never been his concern. But now, as the cargo ship carried them further from everything he knew, he found himself wondering the same thing. On the 22nd day, the ship captain called them to the bridge. Through the main window, they saw their destination for the first time. Kepler 5b was a dead moon, gray and cratered, orbiting a gas giant so large it filled half the sky. And there, hanging in the shadow of the moon, was Outpost Halo 7. The station was not what Tiho had expected. It was larger than he had imagined, a long cylinder with several attached modules and a docking ring at one end. But it looked tired and forgotten. The hull was covered in tiny marks from decades of micrometeorite impacts. The lights were dark. The station drifted slowly in its orbit, turning like something dead floating in deep water. "That is your inheritance," the ship captain said, not hiding his doubt. "I have seen better-looking scrap yards." "Thank you for bringing us here," Tiho replied. "We will manage." They transferred to a small shuttle that the cargo ship carried and made their approach to the station. Yuna piloted while Tiho watched the docking ring grow larger in their view. The shuttle's computer found an active beacon, which was surprising. After 60 years, something on the station was still working. The docking process was rough. The station's systems were old and did not communicate well with their shuttle's modern equipment. But eventually, the connection was made and the airlock sealed. Tiho and Yuna floated through the airlock in zero gravity. The station's artificial gravity systems were offline. They turned on their helmet lights and looked around. The first chamber was the docking bay, a large empty space with old equipment strapped to the walls. Everything was covered in a thin layer of dust that floated like fog in the zero gravity. The air was cold but breathable, which meant the life support systems were still running at some basic level. "The power is on," Yuna said, checking her portable scanner. "Just barely. The backup reactors are running at maybe 5% capacity." They moved deeper into the station. The corridors were narrow and dark. Their lights created small circles of brightness in the endless black. Every door they passed was closed, and most of them were locked with old security codes that no longer worked. Tiho felt a strange feeling as they explored. This station had been empty for 60 years, but it did not feel abandoned in the way he expected. There were no personal items left behind, no forgotten equipment, no signs that people had lived and worked here. Everything had been cleaned out, organized, and sealed. Someone had prepared this place before leaving, but prepared it for what? They found the main control room after an hour of searching. Yuna managed to bring some of the systems online using her skills with old technology. Lights flickered to life. The artificial gravity came on suddenly, and they dropped to the floor with surprised grunts. "Sorry," Yuna said, rubbing her knee where she had landed. "I did not expect it to work that fast." The control room screens came alive one by one. Most showed error messages and warnings about systems that needed repair, but the basic functions were working. Life support, gravity, internal lighting. The station was waking up. "This is actually not bad," Yuna admitted, looking around with new eyes. "The structure is solid. The reactors are old but still functional. With some work, this could be a decent home." Tiho nodded, but he was distracted by something on one of the screens. It showed the station's power distribution, and the numbers did not make sense. "Look at this," he said. "The reactors are producing power, but most of it is going somewhere we have not found yet. According to this, there is a major system drawing energy from the lower decks, but we have not seen anything down there except empty storage rooms." Yuna studied the screen, her engineer's mind already working on the problem. You are right. Something is using a lot of power. But what? They spent the next several hours exploring the lower decks. They found exactly what they expected: empty storage bays, maintenance tunnels, equipment lockers that held nothing but ancient tools. But the power readings continued to show energy flowing to a location they could not find. Finally, Yuna discovered the answer. She was examining a wall in one of the storage bays when she noticed something strange. The wall was slightly newer than the others around it. The metal was the same color, but the welding marks were different. "This is not original," she said. "Someone built this wall after the station was constructed. There is something behind it." They searched for an entrance and found it hidden behind a stack of old containers. A door, disguised to look like part of the wall. It had no handle, no visible lock, just a small panel with a single sensor. "A DNA scanner," Yuna said. "Very old technology but very secure. Only someone with the right genetic code can open this." Tiho thought about his great-uncle, about the inheritance, about the strange way the old man had looked at him so many years ago. He pressed his hand against the scanner. For a moment nothing happened. Then a soft light passed over his palm and there was a click. The door slid open silently, revealing darkness beyond. They stepped through the doorway and found themselves at the top of a stairway that led down into a massive chamber. Yuna found a light switch, and suddenly the space was filled with brightness. What they saw made them both stop breathing. It was a hangar, a huge hidden hangar that took up nearly a quarter of the station's total size. And inside the hangar, arranged in perfect rows, were 12 starfighters. But these were not ordinary starfighters. They were nothing like the ships Tiho had flown during his military career. These machines were sleek and strange, with curves that seemed to flow like water and surfaces that reflected light in ways that hurt the eyes. They looked less like human technology and more like something from a dream. At the center of the hangar stood a pedestal, and on the pedestal was a glowing sphere. It pulsed with soft blue light, like a heart beating in the darkness. Yuna walked toward the nearest starfighter as if she was hypnotized. She reached out and touched its hull. The metal was warm under her fingers. "What is this?" she whispered. "Father, what did your great-uncle leave us?" Tiho had no answer. He was still staring at the ships, counting them, trying to understand what he was seeing. 12 fighters, each one worth more than anything he had ever owned. Each one clearly designed for war. He thought about Admiral Beak's mocking laughter, about the worthless scrap metal he had supposedly inherited, about all the people who had looked at him with pity or contempt. None of them had any idea what was hidden here in the darkness. None of them had ever imagined that an old soldier and his daughter would find something like this. Tiho walked toward the glowing pedestal at the center of the hangar. He could feel its energy from 10 steps away, a gentle warmth that seemed to reach out and welcome him. "The answers are in here," he said quietly. "Whatever my great-uncle was doing, whatever he was preparing for, this is where we will find the truth." Yuna joined him at the pedestal, her eyes wide with wonder and fear. Together, father and daughter stared at the pulsing light, knowing that everything was about to change. Outside the station, the gray moon continued its slow orbit around the giant planet. The stars burned cold and distant in every direction, and somewhere in the depths of space, something ancient was beginning to stir. Yuna worked through the night to connect her equipment to the glowing data core. The technology was unlike anything she had seen before. The connections were different from standard human designs, and some of the components seemed to be made from materials she could not identify. But she was patient and clever, and slowly she found ways to make the systems talk to each other. Tiho sat nearby, watching his daughter work. He had offered to help, but she had gently told him that this was beyond his skills. He was not offended. He knew that Yuna's talent with machines was something special, something that had come from her mother. Instead, He explored the hangar, walking between the rows of silent starfighters and trying to understand what his great uncle had created. The ships were beautiful in a way that made him uncomfortable. They did not look like they were built for human pilots. The cockpits were too smooth, the controls too strange, and there was something about their design that suggested power far beyond anything the military had ever fielded. These were not defense ships. These were weapons of war. Near dawn, Yuna finally broke through. She let out a small cry of success and waved her father over. "I have access," she said. "The data core is opening." A holographic display appeared above the pedestal, filling the air with light and information. Numbers, blueprints, and text scrolled past too quickly to read. Then everything stopped, and a single image appeared. It was a man's face, old and tired, with eyes that held the weight of terrible knowledge. Tiho recognized him immediately. "Great uncle," he whispered. The image began to speak. "If you are seeing this message, then you are a member of my bloodline who has passed the genetic security locks. You have found what I spent my life building, and now I must tell you why." The old man's voice was calm but serious. He spoke like someone who had rehearsed these words many times. "My name is Kang Dong-Hwan. I was a colonel in the Earth Defense Fleet, and I was one of the first humans to explore beyond the Kepler system. 63 years ago, my team discovered something that changed everything we thought we knew about the universe." The image shifted. Instead of Dong-Hwan's face, they now saw a star map. The Milky Way galaxy spread out before them, familiar and beautiful. But at the edge of the galaxy there was something else. A dark mass, moving slowly but steadily inward. "We called it the Swarm," Dong-Hwan continued. "A force of destruction that has traveled between galaxies for longer than any civilization has existed. We found evidence of it in ancient alien ruins near Kepler 9. 3 civilizations had faced the swarm before us. 3 civilizations had been completely destroyed, every city burned, every planet consumed, every living thing eliminated." Yuna gripped her father's arm. Tiho could not look away from the dark shape on the map. "I brought this information to the Galactic Assembly," Dong-Hwan said. "I showed them our evidence. I begged them to prepare, to build defenses, to unite against the coming threat. Do you know what they did?" The old man's voice became bitter. "They laughed at me. The Velkari called it human paranoia. The Korath said we were too young to understand the cycles of the universe. The Assembly dismissed our warnings as the fearful imagination of a primitive species. They told us to go back to our little corner of space and stop bothering our betters with fairy tales." The star map disappeared, replaced by technical diagrams and blueprints. "So I made a decision. If the Assembly would not protect humanity, then humanity would protect itself. I gathered a small group of scientists, engineers, and soldiers who believed as I did. We called ourselves the Ember Initiative. We worked in secret for 30 years, funded by our own resources, hidden from every government and military organization." New images appeared. The starfighters, the data core, technology that seemed to blend human designs with something alien and strange. "In the ruins near Kepler 9, we found more than just warnings. We found fragments of technology from one of the destroyed civilizations. They had fought the swarm. They had failed. But their weapons were more advanced than anything we could imagine. We spent decades studying these fragments, learning their secrets and building something new." Dong-Hwan's face returned to the display. "The ships you have found are called Ember Lances. They are equipped with phase shift drives that allow them to move in and out of normal space. Their weapons are singularity torpedoes, each one capable of destroying a capital ship with a single shot. The data core contains everything we learned, every blueprint, every secret. It is humanity's last hope against the darkness that is coming." He paused, and for a moment his expression changed. He looked sad, almost broken. "I am dying. My time is almost over, and I have failed to complete what I started. Only 12 lances were finished before our resources ran out. It is not enough. It will never be enough. But it is something. A spark that might grow into a fire. His eyes seemed to look directly at Tiho. I leave this to you, my blood, because I trust no one else. The military would bury it. The politicians would fight over it. The assembly would demand we surrender it. But you, whoever you are, you can choose what to do. You can hide. You can run. Or you can stand and fight for humanity's future. The message ended with 4 final words. The swarm is waking. For a long moment, neither Tiho nor Yuna spoke. The hangar was silent except for the soft hum of the data core. Finally, Yuna said, "Is it true? Is there really something coming?" Tiho did not answer immediately. He was thinking about his years in the military, about the border wars, about all the times humans had been pushed around by the older species. He thought about the way the assembly treated humanity like children who had no right to sit at the adults' table. "If my great-uncle believed it," he said slowly, "then I believe it too. He was not a man who made up stories." Yuna turned back to the data core and began searching through the files. There were thousands of documents, decades of research. She found observation reports from hidden stations that humanity had placed at the galaxy's edge. She found recordings from automated probes sent into the darkness beyond known space. "Look at this," she said, pulling up a time-stamped report from just 2 years ago. "Our probes detected movement. Something at the galaxy's edge is changing. The scientists who wrote this report said it looks like the swarm is beginning to wake from some kind of dormant state." "How long?" Tiho asked. "How long do we have?" Yuna searched through more files. They estimated 40 years, maybe less. It depends on how fast the swarm moves once it fully awakens. 40 years. It seemed like a long time, but Tiho knew better. 40 years was nothing when you had to prepare an entire species for war. 40 years was barely enough time to convince people that the threat was real. A warning alarm suddenly filled the hangar. Yuna rushed to a nearby console and pulled up the station's sensor data. "We have visitors," she said, her voice tight with worry. 3 ships just entered the system. They are not human." Tiho moved to stand beside her. The sensors showed 3 vessels approaching from the direction of the inner planets. Their design was immediately recognizable. Long, elegant shapes covered in decorative patterns. "Velkari warships. They must have tracked our cargo ship," Tiho said. "Or maybe they just patrol this area regularly. Either way, they know we are here." "What do we do?" Tiho looked at the ember lances standing in their rows. 12 weapons of impossible power, waiting for pilots who knew how to use them. "Can you make one of these ships work?" he asked. Yuna's eyes went wide. "You want to fight 3 Velkari cruisers?" "I want to be ready in case they do not give us a choice." Yuna hesitated for only a moment. Then she turned back to the data core and began searching for operational manuals. "There is an activation sequence," she said, her fingers moving quickly. "The ships are designed to interface with any qualified pilot through a neural link, but it takes time to power up the systems." "How much time?" "I do not know. I have never done anything like this before." Tiho put his hand on her shoulder. "Then start now. I will try to buy us whatever time I can." He limped out of the hangar, heading for the main control room. Behind him, Yuna was already working, her fear pushed aside by the focus that had always been her greatest strength. The Velkari were coming, and for the first time in 60 years, the Ember Lances were about to be tested. Tiho reached the control room as the Velkari ships entered communications range. He activated the station's old transmitter and waited. He did not have to wait long. The main screen flickered and a Velkari face appeared. The alien was tall and thin, with pale blue skin and eyes that held no warmth. Gold markings on his uniform showed his rank, a commander, probably in charge of a patrol squadron. "Human vessel," the Velkari said. his voice cold and superior. "You are in restricted space. Identify yourself and explain your presence here." T-Ho kept his voice calm. "This is Outpost Halo 7, a legally registered human station. I am Kang T-Ho, the owner. I have documents from the Galactic Legal Office confirming my claim." The Velkari commander made a sound that might have been laughter. "A human station in the Kepler frontier. This area was surveyed by the Velkari Empire decades ago. There is nothing here of value." "Then you have nothing to worry about," T-Ho replied. The commander's expression changed. He did not like being spoken to this way by a human. "We will be conducting an inspection," he said. "You will power down your systems and prepare for boarding. Any resistance will be met with appropriate force." T-Ho knew what this meant. The Velkari often boarded human ships and stations, claiming the right to inspect for illegal activities. They would take whatever they wanted and destroy whatever they could not use. It was technically against assembly law, but no one ever stopped them. Humans were too weak to complain. "I must decline your inspection," T-Ho said. "This station contains private property protected under human territorial law." The Velkari commander stared at him for a long moment. "You decline? A crippled soldier hiding in a piece of junk wants to decline a Velkari inspection." He turned to someone off-screen and said something in his own language. When he turned back, he was smiling. "Very well. We will take what we want by force. Perhaps we will leave enough of your station standing for you to float home in." The transmission ended. T-Ho immediately opened a channel to the hangar. "Yuna, how close are you?" His daughter's voice came back, stressed but determined. "2 ships are almost ready. I can pilot one remotely through the neural interface. But father, these systems are complicated. I do not know if they will work." "They have to work," T-Ho said. "The Velkari are not going to wait." He made his way back to the hangar as fast as his bad leg would allow. When he arrived, Yuna was standing at a control station, her head wrapped in a thin metal band that connected her to the data core. 2 of the ember lances were glowing with power, their strange hulls shimmering with energy. "The cockpit of the second ship is open," Yuna said, pointing. "The neural interface will guide you through the controls. Just sit in the seat and let the ship connect to your mind." T-Ho climbed into the cockpit of the nearest lance. The seat adjusted automatically to fit his body, and a helmet descended from above to cover his head. For a moment, there was darkness. Then his mind exploded with information. He could feel the ship like an extension of his own body. Every system, every weapon, every sensor was as clear to him as his own heartbeat. The phase shift drive hummed at the edge of his awareness, ready to bend space itself at his command. The Singularity torpedo launcher waited like a coiled snake, eager to strike. "Can you feel it?" Yuna's voice came through the neural link, sounding amazed and frightened at the same time. "The ship is talking to me. It is like it has been waiting for someone to wake it up." "I feel it," T-Ho replied. His old soldier's instincts were coming alive. The fear and doubt he had felt moments ago were gone, replaced by a cold certainty. He knew how to fight. He had been fighting his entire life. This was just another battle. The hangar doors opened, and the 2 ember lances launched into the darkness of space. T-Ho felt the ship respond to his thoughts, moving with a grace and speed that no human vessel had ever achieved. Beside him, Yuna's remotely piloted lance flew in perfect formation. The 3 Velkari cruisers had formed a triangle around the station. They were each 10 times the size of an ember lance, covered in weapons and heavy armor. By any normal calculation, this fight should have been over before it started. The Velkari commander's voice came through on an open channel. 2 antiques against 3 cruisers. Humans never learn. This will be entertaining." T-Ho did not reply. He was remembering all the times humans had been pushed down, mocked, and dismissed. He was remembering Admiral Beak's laughter in the corridor. He was remembering his gray tunkle's words about a threat that nobody would believe. "Yuna," he said quietly, "follow my lead." He activated the phase shift drive. The universe twisted around him. One moment he was 1,000 kilometers from the lead cruiser. The next moment he was directly behind it, so close he could see the welding marks on its hull. The Velkari had no time to react. Their weapons were pointed in the wrong direction. Their shields were not configured for an attack from this angle. Tiho fired. The singularity torpedo was a small thing, no larger than his fist. But when it struck the cruiser's engine section, it created a point of infinite gravity that lasted for 1 terrible second. The rear third of the Velkari ship collapsed inward, crushed by forces that should not exist outside of black holes. The cruiser's power systems failed instantly, and the great ship began to tumble through space like a broken toy. Before the other cruisers could respond, Yuna's lance appeared beside the second vessel. She did not have Tiho's years of combat experience, but she had something else, a perfect understanding of the technology she was using. Her ship danced around the cruiser's weapons fire, phase shifting in and out of normal space so quickly that the Velkari computers could not track her. She targeted the weapons arrays with precision shots, burning out each gun emplacement one by one until the cruiser was defenseless. The third Velkari cruiser turned and ran. Its engines flared to maximum power as it fled toward the edge of the system, broadcasting a distress signal that would be heard across Velkari space. In less than 5 minutes, the battle was over. Tiho guided his lance back toward the station, his hands trembling inside the cockpit. The neural interface showed him the damage they had caused. One cruiser crippled, one cruiser disabled, one cruiser retreating in panic. 3 warships from the mighty Velkari Empire defeated by 2 human pilots in ships that had been hidden for 60 years. "Father," Yuna's voice came through the link, "are you all right?" Tiho let out a breath he did not know he had been holding. "I am fine, better than fine." They docked with the station and climbed out of their ships. In the hangar, they stood together and looked at what they had accomplished. The ember lances settled back into their resting positions, still glowing faintly with power. "They will come back," Yuna said. "The Velkari will send more ships, a lot more." Tiho nodded. "Yes, they will. And they will want to know how we did this. They will want these ships." "Everyone will want these ships," Tiho said. "The Velkari, the Assembly, even our own government. Once word spreads about what happened here today, nothing will be the same." Yuna was quiet for a moment. Then she looked at her father with the same determination he remembered seeing in her mother's eyes. "Good," she said. "Let them come. Let them see what humans can do when we stop asking for permission." Tiho smiled. It was the first real smile he had felt in years. "Your great-great-uncle would have liked you," he said. They returned to the control room and began preparing for what came next. The Velkari distress signal was already spreading across space, carrying news of their defeat. Soon, every power in the galaxy would know that something had changed. Humanity had a secret weapon, hidden at the edge of nowhere, guarded by a retired soldier and his daughter. The game was just beginning. News traveled fast across human space. Within 3 days, everyone knew what had happened at Outpost Halo 7. The story spread through military channels, civilian networks, and underground information systems. A retired soldier and his teenage daughter had defeated 3 Velkari warships using technology that no one had ever seen before. The reactions were mixed. Some people celebrated. For years, humans had been forced to accept Velkari bullying, to lower their eyes and hope not to be noticed. Now, for the first time, someone had fought back, and won. Other people were worried. The Velkari Empire was powerful, and they did not accept defeat easily. What would happen when they returned with a real fleet? What would happen when they demanded answers? And some people were angry. In the halls of Earth's orbital command, Powerful men and women gathered to discuss what this strange development meant for their careers and their control. 2 weeks after the battle, a military cruiser arrived at Outpost Halo 7. It was followed by a civilian transport carrying government officials and lawyers. T-Ho watched them approach from the control room, his face showing no emotion. "They are requesting permission to dock," Yuna said from her station. "The lead ship is carrying Admiral Beek Sung-ho and Director Oh-hana from the Defense Ministry." T-Ho almost laughed. Of course it was Beek. The man had spent years climbing the political ladder, and now something had happened that threatened to leave him behind. He would want to take control of the situation, to claim credit, to make sure that whatever happened next served his interests. "Let them dock," T-Ho said, "but only the Admiral and the Director. Everyone else stays on their ships." The meeting took place in the station's main conference room, which Yuna had cleaned and made presentable over the past 2 weeks. Admiral Beek entered first, his uniform covered in medals that he had not earned through combat. Behind him came Director Oh-hana, a thin woman with cold eyes and a reputation for making problems disappear. "Kang T-Ho," the Admiral said, looking around the room with obvious displeasure. "When I heard what happened here, I could not believe it. The crippled soldier who inherited a piece of junk managed to destroy Velkari warships." He shook his head. "I thought it must be a mistake, some kind of exaggeration." "It was not an exaggeration," T-Ho replied calmly. Director O stepped forward. "We have seen the sensor records from the Velkari ships that escaped. The technology you used is far beyond anything in our military inventory. Where did it come from? Who built it?" "My great-uncle built it," T-Ho said. "Colonel Kang Dong-Hwan, 60 years ago. It was part of a project called Ember, designed to give humanity a defense against a threat that the Galactic Assembly refused to acknowledge." He told them everything. He showed them the hidden hangar, the 12 Ember Lances, the data core with its decades of research. He played his great-uncle's recorded message, watched their faces as they learned about the swarm and the destruction it had brought to 3 civilizations. When the message ended, Admiral Beek was pale. Director O was very still, her calculating mind processing the implications. "This changes everything," she said finally. "This technology, these ships, this information about a galactic threat. The government must take control of this station immediately. It is too important to be left in private hands." "I disagree," T-Ho said. Admiral Beek's face turned red. "You disagree? You are nobody. A retired soldier with no authority and no support. You cannot simply refuse to cooperate with the Defense Ministry." T-Ho stood up from his chair. Despite his bad leg, despite his years of being ignored and dismissed, he seemed to fill the room with his presence. "The data core is encrypted to my bloodline," he said. "Only a Kang can access it. If you take this station from me, you will have 12 ships you cannot fly and information you cannot read. You will have nothing." "We can find ways around the encryption," Director O said, but her voice was less certain now. "Maybe, in 40 years, because that is how long we have before the swarm arrives. 40 years to build a fleet, train pilots, and convince the galaxy that the threat is real. Do you want to waste time fighting me, or do you want to start preparing?" Admiral Beek opened his mouth to argue, but Director O raised her hand to stop him. "What do you want?" she asked T-Ho directly. "I want my daughter commissioned as chief engineer of this station, with full authority over the technical development of Project Ember. I want resources to bring all 12 Lances online and to begin building more. And I want humanity to stop bowing to species who dismissed our warnings and will come begging for our help when the swarm arrives." The director stared at him for a long moment. Then, surprisingly, she smiled. It was a small smile, barely visible, but it was real. "You are not the same man who stood in the halls of Orbital Command 2 months ago," she said. "That man would have accepted whatever we offered and been grateful." That man had nothing to fight for, Tiho replied. Now I do. The negotiations lasted 3 days. There were arguments, threats, and compromises. Admiral Beak fought against every concession, but Director O proved to be more practical. She understood that Tiho held all the important cards, and she was smart enough to make a deal rather than an enemy. In the end, Yuna was given the rank of Lieutenant Commander and the official title of Chief Engineer, Outpost Halo 7. Resources would be sent: engineers, scientists, materials, and funding. Project Ember would become an official government program, but Tiho would remain in command of the station with full authority over operations. Most importantly, the information about the swarm would be released to the public. Humanity would finally learn the truth about what was coming. On the day the officials departed, Admiral Beak stopped at the airlock and turned back to face Tiho. You have made powerful enemies today, he said. There are people who will not forget this, people who do not like being challenged. Tiho looked at him without fear. There are worse things in the universe than powerful enemies, Admiral. There are things that eat civilizations for breakfast. I would rather face your politics than face the swarm unprepared. Beak had no response. He turned and left without another word. That evening, Tiho found Yuna in the hidden hangar. She was standing at the central pedestal, staring at the glowing data core. The 11 dormant ember lances surrounded her like sleeping guardians. How do you feel? He asked. Yuna turned to look at him. Her eyes were bright with emotions he could not quite identify. Pride, maybe, and fear, and something that looked very much like hope. I feel like everything is about to change, she said. Not just for us, for everyone. Tiho nodded. He walked to stand beside her, and together they looked at the holographic star map that floated above the pedestal. The galaxy spread out before them, beautiful and vast. And there, at the edge of known space, a faint red glow marked the approaching swarm. Your great-great-uncle called this a spark, Yuna said. He said he hoped it would grow into a fire. And what do you think? Tiho asked. Yuna was quiet for a moment. Then she reached out and touched the data core, feeling its warmth against her fingers. The technology of a dead civilization, preserved by one stubborn old man, inherited by two people that nobody thought mattered. I think the universe is about to find out what humans can really do, she said. They laughed at us, they dismissed us, they called us primitive and young and weak. She turned to face her father and her smile was fierce. Let them laugh now. Tiho smiled back. He thought about all the years of struggle, all the mockery and failure and pain. He thought about his great-uncle, working alone in the darkness, building weapons for a war that nobody believed would come. And he thought about the future. Not the dark future of extinction, but the bright future where humanity stood tall among the stars. Where his daughter led teams of engineers building fleets of ember lances. Where soldiers trained to fight the coming darkness, not because they were ordered to, but because they chose to. Let them come, he said quietly. Outside the station, the stars burned cold and distant. The gray moon continued its orbit around the gas giant. And somewhere at the galaxy's edge, the swarm stirred in its ancient sleep, unaware that the youngest species in the galaxy was preparing a welcome they would never forget. The spark had been lit, the fire was beginning to spread, and humanity was finally ready to burn.